The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "First tell yourself what you would be, and then act accordingly in all that you do." My name is Andrew Perlot, and I think this is one of Stoicism's most powerful ideas and in accord with modern brain research on generating motivation. Along with several other ideas from Epictetus, it pretty much codified the approach I used to lose 40 odd pounds and keep it off for a couple decades to beat an autoimmune disease, and more generally to just start enjoying activities which I find hard and unappealing. Epictetus was not issuing life hacks for the general public. He wanted his students to prefer their own good opinion of themselves over the external rewards that most people chase. But his advice for achieving this aligns perfectly with what modern scientific research tells us we should do if we want to switch over from being driven by external rewards, that endless chase, over to being driven by intrinsic experiences. This is critical if we want to do things that we're naturally kind of not interested in doing or which we find hard. People remark that children are not corrupted by the drives that motivate many adults. They're born with self-directed curiosity and they use it to explore their world. They also play without aiming to achieve anything in particular. The play is its own reward. But you can easily destroy their desire to play. All you have to do is prompt them with an external reward. In this Stanford University study, researchers put out markers and paper and observed how long preschool children drew during a free play period with many other toys and play options. They recruited 75 of the most avid drawers, divided them into 3 groups, and brought them into separate rooms one by one. The first group was promised a good player certificate with their name on it if they drew. The second was promised no reward, but given the same certificate afterward. The third group was promised nothing and received nothing. The kids promised the certificate drew more, but the artistic quality of the art was rated as worse than those of the other 2 groups. But researchers discovered the real outcome 2 weeks later when the kids again had a free play period. Those promised a reward for drawing were less interested in drawing than they'd been before. Those given the surprise reward and those given nothing drew just as much as they had in the prior play period. Even in adults, modern research has found that extrinsic rewards erodes our intrinsic desire to do something. Extrinsic rewards like wealth and reputation will get us to do hard things, but it doesn't make us enjoy the work. But the main reason why extrinsic rewards are problematic is that they often backfire on us. If you decide that you want to lose weight to look good in a bathing suit this summer, that might drive you to lose weight, but it's probably less of a long-term solution than simply deciding that you enjoy eating healthy food in appropriate quantities and that you're someone who enjoys exercising. A lot of people say that they want to write a book, but there's a saying among authors, most people enjoy having written. They don't necessarily enjoy the act of writing itself. But if you want to be a writer, enjoying the process of writing will make it vastly easier and more enjoyable. You might say, okay, well that's all well and good, but there's still a bunch of things that I don't want to do, that I might hate, which I probably would be better off doing. Well, Epictetus and modern brain research has you covered. First, the pleasure and motivation we experience during an activity is in part determined by how much dopamine we've released previously. If we use stimulants and energetic music to spike dopamine to get ourselves revved up to exercise, there's less left over for the activity itself, reducing the pleasure we experience doing it. Second, giving ourselves rewards or receiving them from others associates less pleasure with the activity that generated those rewards. Rewards disassociate the neural circuits for dopamine that would normally be active during the activity. The more we rev dopamine beforehand or spike it afterwards with rewards, the less we're going to enjoy the activity itself. So what should we do instead? Here's what neuroscientist Andrew Huberman says about becoming intrinsically motivated. We need to start to attach the feeling of friction and effort to an internally generated reward system. You can tell yourself the effort part is the good part. You will find the rewards, meaning the dopamine release, inside effort if you do this. You need to tell yourself this effort is great. Do this in the moments of the most intense friction. Tell yourself you're doing this by choice and because you love it. Don't spike dopamine prior to engaging in effort. Don't spike dopamine after engaging in effort. Learn to spike your dopamine from engaging in effort itself. This sort of self-talk, in the sense of telling yourself what sort of person you are and not letting yourself get carried away in the pursuit of external things, is pretty much Epictetus's specialty. Epictetus would have us tell ourselves what sort of person we want to be and then act accordingly. You must be either good or bad. You must cultivate either your own reason or else externals. Apply yourself either to things within you or without you. That is to be a philosopher or one of the mob. This sort of self-talk is how I beat most of the problems that plagued me during the early part of my life. I remember feeling disempowered when I was a teenager, like life happened to me. I was obese, I was suffering from a autoimmune condition that would eventually be diagnosed as colitis. I was a pretty poor student and I hated exercise. The way I took my power back, the way I began to feel empowered was by realizing that nothing could stop me from being the sort of person that I wanted to be inside, regardless of what my external reality seemed to look like. I hated fitness. I thought people who ran were crazy, but I just kept telling myself how great it was that I was the type of person who worked at fitness. Gradually, my internal reality mirrored my external reality, and slowly but surely, I actually became fit and I actually started to like exercise. I told myself I was the type of person who ate moderately, and how great it was that I could have self-control when I felt an urge to, say, get a second helping of food that I didn't really need. Unsurprisingly, the weight loss just followed, and it didn't feel like a lot of effort. It took me a while to figure out the colitis, but once I realized that I had to fast and that I had to avoid certain foods, I just rewired myself to be the sort of person who did those things, who took care of himself. If I had promised myself a reward, if I had said, I'll take care of myself if I give myself whatever the reward is, a cookie, I would have failed a long time ago. Epictetus also brilliantly understood that every time we frame something in our minds, if we're going to emphasize the internal reality totally under our control or the external things that are outside of our control, we're basically determining how all future iterations of this sort of scenario will play out. Remember that the hour of struggle is come, Epictetus said. The Olympic contest is here and you may put off no longer, and that one day and one action determines whether the progress you have achieved is lost or maintained. Everything we know about modern dopamine and brain research on motivation basically says this. So next time you have to get yourself to do something hard that you don't want to do, you have a choice. You can amp yourself up beforehand and then promise yourself a reward after. Or you can start with the self-talk, telling yourself that you're actually the type of person who does this, who enjoys this, who does this well, and isn't it great? One last thing. I've previously said that labeling is a little bit dangerous because it makes us a little bit stupider than we otherwise would be when we let a label into our identity. But Epictetus actually sidesteps this. Epictetus wants us to live according to wisdom and virtue. The 4 Stoic virtues are wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. If you're struggling with something hard and you say to yourself, isn't it great that I get the opportunity to be moderate, just, wise, or courageous? Then that's one sort of thing. It's entirely different if you say to yourself, isn't it great that I get to express my identity as a paleo dieter, say? Epictetus's virtue approach, Stoicism's virtue approach, is probably the more sustainable option. At any given time, exactly what you need may be different, but you're never not going to need to be moderate, wise, just, and courageous. On one hand, you can turn away from overeating using moderation, but on the other, you're also going to turn away from the crazy binge diet, which you know is not going to be sustainable. And of course, there is one big upside to building identity around virtue. It makes you a better person. If we habituate a dopamine response to acting with virtue, you're probably going to be at least somewhat more virtuous. Just saying.